I'm going to talk about using science to helping make change happen. And first question is why would you want to be doing this? Well, it's because scientists have been observing ongoing environmental degradation, and we're just not satisfied simply documenting declines. Rather, we want to help solve environmental problems by employing good science. So the Boyer and his colleagues put together a book called Scholarship Reconsidered, in which scholarship was redefined from teaching, service, and research to being discovery, teaching, integration, and application. So in particular, what is this integration and application? Well, the faculty at the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science put together a strategic plan back in 2000 in which they wanted to create an integration application network to advance the effective science and stimulate the communication of the science to managers, NGOs, education institutions, and the public. And they charged the president of the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science, Don Bosch, to go and make this happen. So Don went to the Maryland state legislature and got the approval to create the integration application network. So I was hired as the first vice president of science application for this EAN effort. And I brought with me, this is back in 2002, brought with me a bunch of symbol libraries that we had developed in Australia when I was at the University of Queensland. We kicked off a publication series, and then in the following year we kicked off a website where we put our symbol libraries. We had a hurricane come through, and this hurricane created a storm surge, and it was a learning moment to talk about sea level rise. So we did a newsletter, had a series of seminars, and followed that up with a conference and a conference proceedings book the following year. We also started vetting the concept of a Chesapeake Bay report card. And then in 2004, we did our first publication that was synthetic, and it was focused on the Maryland coastal bays. We initiated science communication courses taught at the Horn Point campus. And we initiated a partnership which went for 7 years. We called EcoCheck. It was a partnership with NOAA based at the Oxford Cooperative Lab in Oxford, Maryland. 2005, we took our science communication courses on the road. We began teaching globally. This is a Thailand course that we did, but we've gone to many countries since then. We started what's become a 10-year partnership with the National Park Service. We also began forecasting summer conditions for Chesapeake Bay. And then in 2006, we initiated an intern program. This is Joanna Warner, our first intern, and we've had a series of interns since. We published a handbook based on our science communication courses called Communicating Science Effectively, published through the International Water Association. We also began a partnership with the Erasmus Mundus program in Europe, which trains European graduate students. We began in 2007 a synthesis center in Annapolis. We published an assessment of the nation's 140 estuaries called the National Estuarine Eutrophication Assessment. We did our first of what's become annual Chesapeake Bay report cards. And then in 2008, we initiated a ocean literacy program funded by National Science Foundation with a lot of partners in UMCs and elsewhere. It's currently on a website called Teach Ocean Science. In addition to the Chesapeake Bay report card, we started producing tributary report cards, working with different tributary riverkeeper and waterkeeper groups. And then we began working on climate change with synthetic publications. We did two published in 2008. One was for the impacts and the others for adaptation. And then in 2009, we started a series of natural resource condition assessments for various national parks in the Chesapeake region. This was Rock Creek, our first, but we've done a dozen since. We launched Ian Press, and that first publication was called Shifting Sands, which was a 400 plus page book about the environmental and cultural history of the documentation of change in the Maryland coastal bays. We also published a book on mesocosms with Springer and um, documenting synthesizing the results from 10 years of research that EPA had funded for UMCs. In 2010, we started a seminar series in Annapolis with short 15-minute seminars. Walt Boynton was one of our stars, and then we've maintained those monthly. Since then, we've started some partnerships with various citizen science groups. We formalized into MTAC, the Mid-Atlantic Tributary Assessment Coalition, and we published a handbook on developing effective conservation and assessment for coastal regions called Integrated Applied Science. 2011, we disbanded the Annapolis Synthesis Center because we were successful partnering with University of Maryland College Park to create the National Socio-Environmental Synthesis Center, a think tank based in Annapolis. And so we co-located with them, and our UMC's Annapolis office was created in association with SUSINC, the National Socio-Environmental Synthesis Center. We published a Great Barrier Reef report card, the first of several. We have protocols we developed for citizen scientists. We began actively marketing the EN products, the science communication, the report cards, and the teaching and training. 2012, we moved into the resilience business, and we started working on a Great Barrier Reef Resilience Index. We published a book on the South Florida region called Tropical Connections, and we worked with the various 21 Pacific Island nations and territories to provide guidance on the reporting frameworks. 2013, we created a virtual environmental partnership funded by the U.S. and Australian State Departments. We ramped up our embedded employees. These are UMCs at the Chesapeake Bay program. We have 11 talented individuals working in that context, as well as some state agency embedded employees, 2 at DNR, 1 at Maryland Department of Education, and 1 at Maryland Department of Environment. We also worked on climate mitigation, helping the Maryland Climate Commission develop this greenhouse gas reduction plan. 2014, we published our first ebook called Dancing with Dugongs, Having Fun and Developing a Practical Philosophy for Environmental Teaching and Research. We did our draft Mississippi River report card, released at a summit in Louisville in 2014, and we published a booklet called New Insights, which was looking at the what we can learn about the 30 years of monitoring Chesapeake Bay. And then this year, 2015, we developed a new website to tell the stories behind the data called Chesapeake Bay Story. We initiated a new partnership with WWF, looking at global rivers assessment. We have a partnership now ramping up with the USGS, the Climate Science Center. And we started a project funded by NSF in New York Harbor with New York Harbor School based on Governor's Island between Manhattan and Brooklyn, and it's called the Billion Oyster Project. So what we're seeing over time is that paradigm shifts can occur when good science is combined with good science communication. From the Copernican Revolution in 1540, and ushered in by Nicholas Copernicus, the Polish astronomer, depicted here, and his successor Galileo, the Italian, who followed up, showing that the Earth was circling the sun rather than vice versa, and Kepler describing the orbits of the planets, and then Newton with the laws of thermodynamics revolutionizing physics, and then the biological revolution ushered in by Linnaeus and his students to depict the living things on Earth. The chemistry revolution by Lavoisier, the Frenchman who debunked the phlogiston theory, and then Lyell, the British geologist who showed the Earth was much older than 6,000 years, and his famous student Charles Darwin, who came up with a theory of natural selection. And then the physics and biology revolutions depicted by Albert Einstein and Watson and Crick. So each of these 50-year time periods over the last 500 years have been answering society's need to understand where we are in this universe, how we relate to living and non-living things, and where we come from and what we're made of. Now we need to understand how we can have a more sustainable planet with 7+ billion people. And that's where the next person in this list will probably not be a dead white European, but somebody else to help usher in the newest paradigm shift on sustainability. So that's going back to the title of this quick talk is Let's Use Science to Make Change Happen. Thank you.